Zulu reports like these from Biafra were on film in black and white. Colour film was to follow.
2 minutes later, the Biafrans are having trouble getting their troops advanced from their forward positions. Most of their bullets are going into the ground ahead.
January 1969, West Africa, a civil war that had already claimed up to 2 million lives, was entering its second brutal year. And then, according to one of the most extraordinary stories in the history of sport, a Brazilian footballer arrived, and the guns fell silent. This is the story of Pelé in Nigeria, the legend, the evidence, and the uncomfortable truth.
Walk through with those kids and help them, just get ready.
To understand the legend of Pelé in Nigeria, you must first understand what was happening in that country in 1969. Nigeria had gained independence from Britain in 1960, but the borders drawn by colonial rulers had forced together three deeply different ethnic groups: the House of Fulani in the north, the Yoruba in the southwest, and the Igbo in the southeast, with no regard for centuries of tension between them. By 1966, that tension had exploded into military coups, massacres, and political collapse. On May 30th, 1967, the southeastern region declared itself the independent Republic of Biafra. The federal government in Lagos refused to accept it. On July 6th, 1967, war began. What followed was catastrophic. The Nigerian military blockaded Biafra, cutting off food and medical supplies. Famine swept through the region. Images of starving Biafran children, swollen bellies, hollow eyes, shocked the world and sparked one of the first major international humanitarian crises of the television age. The war cost Nigeria approximately 100,000 military casualties and up to 3 million civilian deaths, most from starvation. By January 1969, when Santos FC touched down in Lagos, the war had been raging for 18 months, and it was nowhere close to ending. In January 1969, the Brazilian club Santos FC embarked on a money-making African tour. Their itinerary included matches in the Congo, Nigeria, Mozambique, Ghana, and Algeria. Their star player was Pelé, 28 years old, two-time World Cup winner, and widely regarded as the greatest footballer who had ever lived. In much of the world, and particularly in Africa, his arrival was not simply a sporting event, it was a visitation. The Nigerian Football Association paid £11,000 for Santos to play an exhibition match against the national team in Lagos. Pelé scored both goals in a 2-2 draw. He received a standing ovation from every person in that stadium, Nigerian and foreign alike. Demand was so extraordinary that Santos were invited back. After initially declining, they agreed to return to Benin City for a second match on February 4th for £6,000. This time, Nigeria won 2-1. And according to the local military governor, Samuel Ogbemudia, he declared a public holiday and opened the bridge connecting Benin to the surrounding region so that tens of thousands of fans could attend. 25,000 people packed into that stadium, not to watch war, to watch football, to watch Pelé. For decades after those two matches, a legend grew, and it grew into one of the most repeated stories in the history of sport. The story went like this. When Pelé and Santos arrived in Nigeria, both the federal government and the breakaway Republic of Biafra agreed to lay down their weapons. A 48-hour ceasefire was declared so that Nigerians on both sides could watch the greatest footballer on earth. In 2005, Time magazine stated plainly that, and I quote, although diplomats and emissaries had tried in vain for 2 years to stop the fighting, the arrival of Pelé brought a 3-day ceasefire. The story appeared on CNN, in The Guardian, in The Telegraph, on Goal.com, on Wikipedia. It was repeated so often by so many respected outlets that it became accepted fact. Pelé himself appeared to confirm it, at least partially. In his 2007 autobiography, he recalled a massive military presence on the streets and said he believed, in his words, that the Nigerians certainly made sure the Biafrans would not invade Lagos while Santos were there. It was a beautiful story. The most powerful story sport has ever told about itself. And then, researchers began to look more carefully. The most thorough investigation into this story was conducted by Nigerian researcher and writer Ola Ojo Ayegbayo, who went directly to the primary sources, the Nigerian newspapers that covered Santos' visit in real time. He examined 2 key publications, the Nigerian Daily Times in Lagos and the Nigerian Observer in Benin City, both papers gave extensive coverage to Santos matches. Neither paper, not a single edition, reported any ceasefire agreement between the Nigerian government and Biafra. A Santos Club historian also traced the origin of the ceasefire story. According to the Santos Memory and Statistics Center, the claim first appeared not in 1969, but in a 1990 magazine article written more than 20 years after the matches were played. There is also a significant military context that undermines the ceasefire claim. According to a New York Times correspondent covering the war at the time, in early 1969, the separatist forces posed no direct threat to either Lagos or Benin City. The main conflict was being fought more than 130 kilometers from the stadiums where Santos played. The area was considered secure enough that local authorities were already planning a final military offensive.
Crucially, Pelé himself did not mention a ceasefire in his first autobiography, published in 1977. It was only in a later 2007 memoir that a version of the story appeared, and even then, what he actually described was heavy military security around the Santos delegation, not a formal truce between warring factions. So, did Pelé stop the Nigerian Civil War? Almost certainly not. The historical evidence does not support a formal ceasefire. The war did not pause. The killing did not stop. But here is what did happen. In the middle of one of Africa's bloodiest conflicts, a footballer arrived, and for 90 minutes, 25,000 people in a war zone forgot that they were enemies. They cheered together. They breathed together. They were, for one brief moment, simply fans. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything that sport can be. The legend of Pelé stopping a war was almost certainly exaggerated, perhaps even invented. But the impulse behind it, the reason the world wanted so badly to believe it, tells us something true. That we have always understood, somewhere deep inside us, that football has a power that goes beyond winning and losing. The story may be a myth, but the feeling it describes is real. And in a world still full of conflict, still full of division, perhaps that is what matters most. If this documentary made you think, please like this video and subscribe for more stories where sport and history collide. And tell us in the comments, do you think football can still unite people the way this story suggests? We will see you in the next one.